Hey everyone, welcome to 996 The Howl. For the uninitiated, this is an unedited YouTube vlog discussing everything Arizona Coyotes. I just wanted to go deeper on the new hire of the general manager in the name of Bill Armstrong. I wanted to talk about three main things. The direction of the team Bill Armstrong and the ownership are going to come to an agreement on. The roster changes Bill Armstrong will probably need to make. And maybe a coaching change as well. I'll discuss that at the end. So to start off, I want to talk about what the St. Louis Blues in your mind were before the year 2019. To me, they weren't an elite team. They were always there in the playoffs. They were a perennial contender. I can't even remember off the top of my head the last time they missed the playoffs. Just St. Louis was always there. I love the rivalries they had with the Chicago Blackhawks, and it seemed like Chicago would always beat them in the playoffs. A lot of round one exits, a lot of round two exits, and they always seemed to always just be there, just be a team, be a really good team that was great in the regular season. They'd make the playoffs. They'd always fall short, sort of like what the Washington Capitals were, but I feel like the Capitals won a lot of President trophies as opposed to St. Louis. So before 2019, they were a playoff consistent contender, a great team on the ice that the fans would show up for. And so why do I say that? Is I think that's the direction the Coyotes are headed. To be honest, all this talk about rebuilding and starting from scratch, I don't think it's going to happen. The ownership needs and wants a winning culture around the Coyotes. When Alex Morello was hired, his famous phrase was, "I sure as shit want to win." He wants to make money. The Coyotes have been making money since they've been winning the past 2-3 seasons. They gain more attendance, more concession money, more jersey money, and I'm sure the ownership wants for that to continue. So I don't see a rebuild happening. I feel like Bill Armstrong and the ownership are going to come together, see where they could cut some payroll, because that's apparent right now is the Coyotes ownership wants to go way below the cap hit. Understandable in these COVID times and with the uncertainty of whether next season will be played in front of fans or not. And it looks like next season is going to start around the end of December, maybe after Christmas. So that's still 3 months away. And I hope Bill Armstrong and ownership looks at the roster and points out the same names that I look at, which are expendable and which could be moved out and keep the team a contender for the playoffs. Those names to me are Phil Kessel, Alex Goligoski, Derek Stepan, and maybe Antti Raanta. And I say maybe because I think this next season's schedule is going to be a bit tighter, a bit more compact, a lot of back-to-backs. And I think of having a two-headed healthy monster of Kemper and Raanta is going to be way better than having, let's say, Kemper and Hill or Raanta and Hill. And I don't expect the team to trade all of Ekman Larsson or Aiden Hill or Darcy Kemper, at all. I feel like Kemper and OEL are here to stay. That's how they're going to create a contender team. If one of those go, I feel like this team is not headed in the direction of being a perennial, consistent playoff contender. So I expect Stepan, Goligoski, and Kessel to be moved. With Taylor Hall, the ownership still is talking with Hall. I mean, as early as last month, they were still having dinners with Taylor Hall and trying to get him signed at a reasonable number that makes sense for ownership. Maybe not as reasonable on Taylor Hall's side of the negotiations. But if they could try to package a deal of Kessel to another team that frees up his $6.5 million, and then you could trade away someone else and you can fit in Hall. And I would really love Taylor Hall on this team. I feel like only for this season, this upcoming season is the only cap-strapped season for the Coyotes. After this season, the cap is not an issue at all, and I would love to have Hall as part of that core with Keller, Dvorak, Chychrun, OEL, and Schmaltz. I feel like adding Taylor Hall to that core would be phenomenal and would give confidence for the fans that this team's going to contend for a long number of years. But for right now, this season, it's crunch time. You got to make some hard decisions. It's that turnover year that John Chaika mapped it all out to be. We got reports today that Jomerson is staying with the Coyotes, so that's why I did name him as one of the players to, sell off. And Jomerson would be the hardest one to replace. So thankfully, Jomerson stays. I know he's expensive, but he plays a certain role that cannot be replaced. Whereas I feel like Stepan, Goligoski, and Kessel, all three of those guys could be easily replaced by some Tucson guys. Jordan Gross, Kyle Capobianco, if they get re-signed, because right now they're restricted free agents. But I feel like those two defensemen could, just play more NHL ice time. And I feel like Jordan Osterley as well had a great playoffs, way better than Goligoski. And I feel like Osterley can move up in the defensive pairings as well. So I'm confident in those three guys replacing the workload of Goligoski. As for Kessel, Barrett Hayden's going to come in and pick up those points. Kessel didn't put up too many points, too many goals. They're easily replaceable. Hayden could fill in for Kessel or Derek Stepan, and then you could get a nice, cheap free agent signing that could pot in 12, 15 goals easily, and way less of a price tag than Phil Kessel. So that's where I'm standing in terms of direction of the team and the roster moves. We'll see. Bill Armstrong might start making moves as early as this week or next week, but those are the names that I feel like could be moved out of the Coyotes in order to bring in Taylor Hall or a number of free agents to fill in those smaller gaps. And I feel like this team would be so much better moving forward next season with Taylor Hall on this team. It's just this year it's a bad year to try to fit Taylor Hall in, but if you could fit it in for this year, the next 5 to 7 years are looking really good with Taylor Hall and that core. If they move away from Hall to decrease payroll even more, that's fine. They'll save a lot of money. Hopefully the team could still contend without Hall. I would still like to see Kessel traded, because I feel like he didn't live up to the hype and didn't live up to his own standards on this team. But we'll see from there. In terms of restricted free agents, I would love to see Fisher and Hinostroza re-signed. Fisher less than Hinostroza. I feel like Fisher should be re-signed at an entry level or just standard entry contract, maybe $800,000, $900,000, just like Aiden Hill was signed for. Hinostroza I could see for maybe 1.3, 1.5 million. He's got some upside to him. He took a step backwards last season, but there's still some high ceiling for Hinostroza, so I'd love to see him back. He's a young, speedy, fast guy who works well with this roster. And that's it for roster and direction of the team. I want this team to be a consistent playoff contender. I want them to shed some salary, but not the important salaries that will derail this team off track of being a playoff contender. And in terms of coaching, Bill Armstrong was around the St. Louis Blues when they were last place in 2018, the winter of 2018, when they were last place. And the sentiment around the St. Louis Blues was blow it up. Their window closed, their last place. They looked dog awful. I remember a game in winter of 2018 where the Coyotes just ran around St. Louis. I believe they won 6-1 that game or 7-1. And St. Louis looked old and slow. And the general manager at the time, I believe his name's Doug Armstrong, had to make, some questionable changes if he was. Was he going to trade away Tarasenko? Was he going to sell off the farm and rebuild and try to go for that high draft pick in Alex Lafreniere for this past draft? I'm sure if they started to rebuild then, they still would have been a basement lottery team to try and get Alex Lafreniere. So he didn't. Instead, what the general manager did was fire the coach, get a new coach, bring in a change of face in the goalie side with Jordan Binnington, who Bill Armstrong was part of drafting Binnington as well. So what St. Louis did was they fired their head coach, they brought in Craig Berube, they brought in Jordan Binnington, and from last place to Stanley Cup, the St. Louis Blues did the impossible. So when I look at the Coyotes and I look at their team and I look at their coach and Rick Tocchet, who's best friends with Craig Berube, might I add, I feel like Bill Armstrong will be steady. He'd be calm and rational, and he wouldn't make such radical or irrational trades if things aren't going well in the beginning of next season. He's not going to sell off their captain. He's not going to sell off their starting goalie. their star young players. He's going to wait and see and make some other changes first before going that rebuild side, because I think both the ownership and Bill Armstrong know that to get fans and seats, you got to have a winning team. And if you start signaling to the fan base that they're going to rebuild, that's another 2 to 3 years of rebuilding. And this fan base has seen way too much rebuilding over the past 10 years, I would say. So if you start to see the team, struggling out of the gate next season, maybe by mid-February, maybe a quarter into the season, maybe you see a coaching change to spark the team. Maybe you see a different coaching style get reintroduced into the Coyotes. I feel like I'm more confident having Bill Armstrong at the helm because he experienced it. He was there. He was right beside his general manager when that last place St. Louis Blues team fired their coach and made it to the Stanley Cup Finals and won that beloved trophy. So I feel like Bill Armstrong will be patient. He's got a couple of weeks here before the draft and free agency to see what his team has. Talk with Rick Tocchet, talk with Steve Sullivan. We'll see what happens with Steve Sullivan's role this week or next week. I hope Steve Sullivan stays, but if he goes for better pastures, then good luck to him. I'm really confident in Bill Armstrong. He's going to be a very controlled guy. He's not going to sell off the farm. He's going to be in constant talks with ownership. He's got a 5-year contract, so he's here for the long haul. He's going to make the right moves, I hope, and he's got a good base that John Chayka has left him. Obviously, not a lot of draft picks, but a lot of good young players that you can build around. And he's a guy who was around. I'll repeat it again. He changed the coach. He changed the goalie. He made some tweaks instead of rebuilding to make the St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup. So I hope he brings all that knowledge and experience to the Coyotes. And we'll see. I'm really curious about his first move as a general manager. I feel like that first move is going to signal to the fan base and to ownership where he's going to head this team towards. It's going to be a quiet draft for him. He's going to talk to a lot of teams. Free agency is going to be busy for him with regards to Taylor Hall. Whether Hall decides to walk or re-signs, I hope he re-signs. I hope they try and fit him in. Those veteran high cap hits that I've mentioned previously in this video, he could trade and sell those guys off to create room for Hall or create some breathing space for ownership in terms of financials. But it was a good hire, a very veteran professional in the National Hockey League, not so much a great resume compared to Ray Shero or Ron Hextall, but I'm sure those guys carried a heavy price tag. So Bill Armstrong, a bit of a cheaper signing. He was an assistant general manager. This is his first general manager role. And we'll see. I give all my good luck to Bill Armstrong, and I'm confident in him, and hopefully the Coyotes are headed into the same direction in which I hope that the team goes towards. So that's it for me. It was a long one. Thank you for watching it all, and thank you for your support.